Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Namaskara, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching or listening, and welcome to this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. My guest this week is Yana Son. Yana and I, like most of my guests except for a couple of them, met through the University of Central Oklahoma. In this episode, we spoke about graduating from there, because both of us graduated from there a couple of days back. And we also spoke about growing and learning from people around us. We also spoke about the culture of our home country, Kazakhstan, because there's a ton that we don't know about that place. So there's a ton that you'll get to learn from this episode and a lot that you can relate to as well. So without further ado, I present to you Yana Son on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Hey Anna, how's it going?
Hey, Prateek, I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Just to get started, let the people know who you are, what some of your likes are, some of your dislikes, um, some of your future aspirations, and so on.
Well, hello everybody who's watching. My name is Yana Son. I am an international student from Kazakhstan. I'm currently a senior. Actually, I graduated a couple of days ago, yesterday, with my bachelor's in business administration and marketing and minor in professional selling. Um, I am going to graduate school at UCO next year in business analytics. And some of the fun facts about me is I speak languages, even though I'm Korean. My first language is Russian. And I do enjoy music and I do enjoy people. And probably the most inspirational thing in my life is people who are around me because I learned so much from them. And especially here, when I came here in America and joined UCO, I met so many different leaders from around the globe who helped me grow personally and academically.
That's awesome. Do you have any future aspirations that you've thought of or you're comfortable sharing? Any sort of dislikes?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, future aspirations. Honestly, I'm that kind of a person who kind of goes not the flow, but I adapt to circumstances. And especially during the pandemic, this fast changing world, I feel like it's one of the most valuable things and qualities that people need to have is ability to adapt to different unexpected situations. But honestly, one of my main goals in life is to be a good person and to be valuable in someone's life and help others to achieve their goals or just do any little things for them to make them happy and help them find themselves in their lives. And some of the dislikes, it's hard to say because when it comes to like personal qualities, it's probably I don't like when people are not sincere, if it makes sense. If they are not even about lying, but when they are hiding themselves from who they really are and trying to be who they are not. And I feel like that's one of the qualities that I dislike in people. Yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting. There's a lot of little nuggets there that I have questions about. But first off, we'll start with graduation. Well, as you mentioned, you graduated at the time of recording yesterday. And how does it feel being a graduate and the whole feeling of it sinking in to just the entire experience? If you want to encapsulate it in a... Yeah, go for it. How does graduation feel, to put it simply?
Absolutely. Well, honestly, it feels a little weird because, people wait for this moment, for this big moment in their life for 4 years and they work hard. And once it's done, you're like, oh, it's kind of empty inside. like you achieve that goal. So what's next? So like it's a matter of finding the next goal. So at the moment, when I woke up today, I was like, time is it? I need to do homework. And then I was like, oh, I graduated yesterday. I don't have any homework. So it was a little weird, like, not having anything, I wouldn't say like to care about or something, but that daily routine that we are used to, doing homework every day, studying, it's gone. Like, and it feels a little weird. And I would say that I don't feel at my final destination since I'm going to graduate school. So I kind of have that feeling in the back of my mind that I still need to study. I still need to do homework. It's just a little break. But I would say it was nice to have bachelor's, I guess. Now I feel like an adult. So it's more responsibilities and it's scary, but it's pretty exciting.
Cool. So it's sort of like you're having a bit of a summer break before you go back to school, but this time you'd be going back to graduate school, sort of.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. No, definitely. Because like Yana did, I graduated today, and at the time of recording, that is, and like the feeling is it's kind of weird. Like you would think that it feels like the burden's gone, or if it feels any different, but it doesn't feel that much different to me. It's just like, oh, okay, it's just another day, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing in the sense that, you know how we like celebrating our achievements, and it's a good thing in that sense. But like it's like you said, it sort of feels empty in a weird way. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it feels empty?
I feel like, honestly, it might be just personally that I feel empty a little bit, because maybe some other people have different goals in their mind, like finding a job or just doing something else. At the moment, I guess I was studying too hard. I was preparing too hard to like graduate and all of the other stuff that was going on along with that, like being involved on campus. So I was so busy that I didn't realize that I'm going to graduate soon. And what are my next steps? Obviously, I know that I'm going to go to the graduate school, but it still feels a little weird. So I would say that I haven't realized that I need to implement my next steps. Because, like when you are getting your bachelor's, it's 4 years, like it's different courses, they're getting harder, but it's still the same routine. You go to school, you work maybe, or do other stuff. But now it's a little weird because graduate school is a new area for me that I have never explored before. So that's why I feel a little empty, because I don't have any experience with it and I don't know how to approach it or what's going to be ahead of me. So like, I don't know what difficulties, what kind of fun I'm going to have with it. So I think that's why I kind of feel empty. Honestly, it can be tied to the things like people say, I can't wait to be 21. But once they turn 21, nothing really happens.
True.
So it's basically like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel you make, because I was about to ask, like, in the sense of it feeling like, oh, you're here, now what? You mentioned something about how seeing people around you and how the goals that they have may seem like yours is sort of empty. Do you think that, like, looking at that perspective of others being okay, the others looking good, but I'm not, can that affect you positively or negatively?
I honestly think that it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to feel that way, because that's how life goes. That's how we learn about our next steps. And it's okay to feel empty sometimes, because you are maybe satisfied with the goal that you achieved currently, and you just don't know where you want to grow and where's the room to grow. And it's just a matter of a time to finding that next goal and finding where you can be at in the future. And for some people, it might take longer. For some people, it might take faster. And it's okay, because every flower blooms at a different time, even if it can be on the same tree. So, and for me, I feel like, honestly, just based on my personality, I'm always pretty like not fun person, but I try to look at everything with a positive perspective. And I know that I have a very support system. I would say, so my support system, I need people who are around me, my friends, my family, and everybody who will, if I don't know where to go, they will guide me through this. And they not just going to guide me, but at least give me some idea where I want to be at in the future. And I feel like the main thing is that I have the motivation to do something, but I just trying to find what. So I feel like it would be a problem if I knew what I wanted to do, but I wouldn't take any steps to achieve that. That would be a problem. But for now, I do have motivation. And I mean, I do feel empty, but I feel like one of the reasons why I feel a little empty is because I know that I'm going to go to the graduate school. So it's kind of like I have my next goal. It's just a matter of a time, me starting approaching it. But if I wasn't planning to do it and I was planning to find a job, I think I would feel a little different.
Totally. No, I agree with you in that sense. You also said something about us never being ready, or that you're not ready for what's to come next. But do you think that we're ever ready? That we'll ever be ready as people?
That's a good question. Honestly, it depends on what kind of things to be ready for. There are certainly things that people need to be ready, and people need to have a mindset for different plans that they want to do in the future. But for me, I would say I honestly personally always like to be prepared, always like to be ready for different circumstances. But for now, there are things that it's hard to get going with unless you really start doing it. And sometimes it's the same in Russian. It's saying that your eyes are scared, but your arms are doing it. So meaning that I might be scared at the moment. I'm not ready for what's going to come next. It's just I've never had experience with it. But I think once I get started, I'll kind of have an idea what to do, and I can guide myself through that.
Fair. Because a lot of the times I feel like there is uncertainty ahead of us, but we can definitely prepare by knowing that there's going to be uncertainty and sort of just preparing ourselves, like you said, in the sense of being ready to deal with anything that comes your way, sort of thing. I guess that's the best way of being prepared, rather than preparing yourself for a specific thing and then expecting something else to attack you, and then you don't know what to do. So I guess in that sense, it's good to prepare yourself for the fact that there is something that might come your way, and not something specific. But you mentioned something. You mentioned about a saying in Russian, and sort of transitioning into that side about you. You mentioned that you're from Kazakhstan and then that you're Korean, but you said you also speak Russian. So talk to me about the dynamic over there. Like, firstly about Kazakhstan and how, like, what was the word I was going to use? I forgot the word. Anyway, like the population of the country, like, are they of a certain ethnicity? So yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I came here to America, and I would say that I'm from Kazakhstan, people are like, Pakistan, and like every single country that ends on stan, it's kind of like sounds similar to them, even though it's completely different cultures, it's completely things. And I was like, no, it's Kazakhstan. So it was very interesting for me that people, maybe it depends on what kind of people as well, but people are not very culturally educated when it comes to different cultures in different countries. And I would say my country was a part of Soviet Union. And then when Soviet Union collapsed, it became independent. That's why I speak Russian, because there are a lot of people who were part of Soviet Union where the main language was Russian, and that kind of passed to my country after it became independent, that most population spoke Russian. And that's why they are two different languages. So it's like a state language is Kazakh language, and the second language is Russian language. It's honestly a pretty big country. It's the 9th largest country in the world, even though our population is not that saturated. And that's why we have a lot of different ethnicities, like Koreans. We have a lot of Koreans. We have a lot of Russians. And of course, we have a lot of Kazakhs. But and I feel like the reason behind it is because when we were a part of Soviet Union, a lot of people from different cultures joined USSR. And then when it collapsed, people just ended up being wherever they were at. And so that's how my family ended up being in Kazakhstan. And
Mm.
yeah, that's why a lot of people think that it's weird that I'm Korean and I don't really speak Korean but it's the same thing as an Asian person who was born in America. They might not speak their native language, but they speak English. So it's kind of the same thing for me.
Mm. Interesting. I mean, I like how you mentioned the sort of possibility of how your family got there, because that was the next thing in my mind. I was like, okay, then how did like your family
They,
get there? Because yeah, but you answered that. So what is the history in terms of the lineage? Like, was it your great grandfather or was it your grandfather? Because it's not that long back. Um, so how far back does it go in terms of your family being in that part of the world? Do you know?
yeah, absolutely. So when my grandmother, she was really young, her father found a job in Russia, I think. Yeah, that's what at
Mm,
least she told. And
okay.
so they moved to Russia from South Korea. And so they ended up being there and they lived like in the countryside. So there were like not a lot of people. It was a small town and they didn't speak Russian. And that was the main
Mm,
problem there because people could not understand them. And she was telling me about all of the difficulties that they faced because it was really different for people in Russian to see Asian people come to their country because we looked
mm,
different, we didn't speak their language. But thankfully, my grandma said that they found really good people who helped them out during that
mm,
time. And I believe it was after Second World War when they moved there. So it was
mm,
still a lot of in Russia and all that kind of stuff. And after that, she grew up there and she learned Russian. And now, when I ask her if she remembers anything in Korean, she says yes, but not much because it's been so long ago, and that language changes every year. And so the
mm,
language that she knows is Old Korean compared to what people speak now. And so when she was older, maybe I don't know what, probably her 20s or maybe early 30s. I'm not sure. She married my grandfather and then she had health problems. And so one of her friends was like, so you should move to Kazakhstan because the climate there is very dry and you should be good for your health. And honestly, she just said, okay. And they moved there. And it was pretty crazy to me because, how can you just move from one place to another because one of the friends told you that? But they did that.
mm,
And, but before they did that, my mom was born in Russia and they moved to my home country. And that's where my aunt was born. That's where my mom met my dad. And that's where I was born.
mm. Yeah, it's always fascinating to hear the sort of history behind all of this in terms of where they ended up going, or how did this happen, or how did that happen. So for those of the listeners and watchers who don't know, if you want to give us a quick brief about Kazakhstan's culture, yeah, talk to us about that.
Uh, could you please repeat yourself again about what culture?
Yeah, culture. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry, you cut out for a second, so I was like, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. No
Um,
worries. You're good.
okay. Honestly, Kazakh culture is a very rich culture because we have a lot of history behind that. We it's like the way that because we were nomads when we
Mm,
back in the days, so we didn't really have a place. So people would just travel from place to place, and it's just a very it took a lot of steps to be where we at right now. And the culture is very interesting because as for me being a Korean, I follow Korean traditions, but they're modified with every single different culture, like with the Russian culture and Kazakh culture. So we don't just celebrate one thing, for example, oh, only Koreans celebrate that, so Koreans do that. No, every single person in my country celebrates that, even though they can be Russian or they can be Kazakh. And same comes for different cultures. So we celebrate Kazakhs' traditions and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the most interesting parts about one of the most interesting things about my country is because we are very diverse when it comes to celebrating, when even the food, honestly. We have our traditional Korean food. That's what we call my country traditional Korean food. But if you compare it to South Korean food, it might have the same concept, but it tastes differently. It's because throughout the years, we took a little bits of every single culture and added to our own culture. And that's how we created our traditional dish. I mean, it's still this, it has the same name, but it's a little different. So I would say that's one of the cool things about my culture and about my country.
I remember, okay, I can't remember if this was Kazakhstan or if it was another place, but are there sort of any, again, I'm losing words, but a unique type of meat that people eat, like that's not the regular stuff?
Yeah, so it's actually a Kazakh's traditional dish, which is called Bish. So it's basically a lot of meat and a dough combined together. So you boil the meat first, then you take the broth from the meat and boil home cooked dough in it. And then you combine it all together, and it's just a big dish that people usually eat when they celebrate something or just when they have guests. So yeah, that's one of the dishes that people in my country, but it's a Kazakh traditional dish. And what the funny thing is, they like to combine this Kazakh traditional dish with Korean traditional salads. So you know what I mean? Whenever they have celebration, they just kind of bring food from different cultures and combine it together and eat it all together.
Could you please repeat the name of it again? Because I think I sort of it sort of cut in transition. But what was the name of the dish again?
It's Bish Parmak.
Bish Parmak.
Yes. Sorry, that's perfect. That is perfect.
Cool. So you said it's like a combination of a lot of meats. And it's sort of like the broth is taken with the dough and they make something out of it. Is it true that, I don't want to get this wrong. I mean, I might be wrong, but is it horse meat or something that people eat in that part of the world?
Okay, I think you've done some research or eat horse meat. And honestly, it might sound cruel or might sound like different or exotic, and which is kind of is, because I didn't realize it till I came here and I was like, have you ever tried horse meat? And they're like, horse meat? I'm like, oh yeah, horse meat, but it's actually really good, and it's really good because it's salty, because people, before they actually do it, they I don't know this word in English, but they kind of like dry it out with salt and everything, and then they cook it. So whenever it comes out, it has a very rich flavor that is salty, that is very soft too. And it's very good for your health because it doesn't have any like greasy, oily stuff in it, if it makes sense.
I mean, that makes sense because horses are not necessarily fatty animals. They're very lean and strong. So
that is very true.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I think if I can find this video somewhere, I'll find it. But I was watching a video of people talking to each other from different parts of the world. And I think that was where I saw this pop up. And I was like, wait, was it Kazakh? Because I couldn't remember if it was Kazakhstan or if it was some other place in that part of the world. So I wasn't quite sure. But that's interesting. Are there any other exotic foods that people eat that the rest of us might find surprising?
But if you ever come to my country, you should definitely try it because it's worth it. It's really good. And everybody who's watching, if you ever come down to my country, just hit me up and I'll hook you up with some good food.
Cool. Yeah, take Yana up on that. Down the road. Down the road. You mentioned something about the culture being very nomadic in how people were like nomads back in the day. And I don't know, but my brain drew this parallel in my head. And please let me know if the question sounds a little too convoluted. I'll try and boil it down even further. But do you think that that sense of nomadic culture sort of prepares people for the things that are to come ahead, in the sense that you don't know what's to come ahead or what is going to happen when you're moving. But then being a nomad sort of comes with the sense of dealing with anything that comes your way rather than preparing for something, because you don't know what might happen when you move somewhere, right? So I don't know. That
Yeah,
was just a thought I had. So what do you think about that?
that is a very interesting question because I've never thought about it that way. But honestly, I feel like absolutely it's maybe because so many generations has passed, and so it's like
Mm,
people don't really tie those things together. But honestly, I feel like since because of the nomadic culture and people traveling all the time, because they would go, depending on the season, they will go to one place to that it has better climate. Then when it's winter, they will go to a different part of the country to do that. So I definitely think that it would affect for people being prepared and kind of just adapt to the climate change, not even climate change, but like to different circumstances. And
mm,
that definitely can tie up to our COVID world. Of course, it was back in the days when people that didn't have technology and everything. But now during COVID times, it shows once again that people need to learn how to adapt faster to situations like
mm,
that and just take precautions as soon as possible and don't take it as a joke or anything. So I definitely think
mm,
that countries, I mean, particularly my country, because of the culture experience in the past, um, they have a different attitude towards things like that. And
mm,
honestly, because they were nomads and there were a lot of soldiers too. So they were like not soldiers in the sense that we think about right now, that soldiers, like army or anything like that, but soldiers who would fight for their, we call it jus. So it's meaning like different. Oh, I don't know how to explain it, but we have three different types of groups. So based on
mm,
the history, it's older brother, middle brother, and the little brother. And out of those three families, it comes different branches, and that's how people find where they came from.
mm,
And so yeah, like fighting for their pride, fighting for their culture, and fighting for their families. And that definitely ties up to adapting to different things because they were traveling and they were fighting. And so yeah, I would say yes to your question that past culture experience can influence to what we have right now.
mm.
If,
Very true. Go
let
ahead.
me know if I answered, if I understood your question correctly.
No, no, yeah, totally. I will. You sort of did break out over there, but yeah, I think I got what you said. You were saying that you want me to or if you don't answer the question that I was looking for you to answer, you want me to let you know, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yes. Cool. But you answered my question. You definitely answered my question because it is that sort of sense of adaptability that I was sort of looking at in terms of be it nomadic culture or be it the personal sort of outlook on life.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, you again, like there was this question. So usually, like the way I ask questions on here is just questions based off of whatever pops up in my head as we were talking. So the other thought that I had was, do you think that history repeats itself in a way for us to learn some lessons?
Like lessons from what culture or
And it could be anything. Could be anything.
hmm. I mean, honestly, if it comes to as we were talking about my home country's culture, I think one thing that is very common in Central Asia or any part of the world, not part of the world, but any country in Asia that some people here not needs to learn necessarily, but maybe take into consideration uh, is the hospitality. Because I feel
Mm,
like people in Asian countries are more open, not even open to other people, but they are very hospitality is in a very high level. So like if we have a guest at the house, we don't necessarily need to give them an invitation to come to their house, because we are always open, we are always welcoming, and we will go above and beyond to not just to please whoever we have in our house, but also for them to have a good time with us. So I would say that that's one of the things that I like about my country, is that we are we value friendships, and we value relationships that we have with people and that we build with people, because here, when I came here, that was the like one of the main things that popped up in my mind that was different from my culture, is that people don't really go to each other's houses, not necessarily every day, but I mean, like, on the weekends, they don't go visit each other unless they get invitation, you know. Of course, it depends on the families as well, but most of my experiences that I have experienced is that people don't really do that. And it was a little weird to me. And when you come to someone's house, they're just like, you know, just a little chit chat, and then you say bye and go along with your way. But I feel like having this warm, welcoming feeling is what people might lack in this part of the world, if it makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of
I
sense
don't
in
know.
terms of. Go ahead. You were saying you're going to say
Yeah,
something?
I don't know if it's really related to Indian culture or where you came from, but I feel like more like Asian cultures are just more welcoming cultures, if it makes sense.
No, I agree. I agree because there's a phrase if I'm not mistaken, in Sanskrit, which is one of the older languages in the world, and it's basically Atiti Devo Bhava, which means guest is God.
Mhm.
So yeah, in that sense, like the aspect of hospitality is very or is highly regarded in Indian culture as well. But I was just thinking, do you think that that lack of hospitality? Well, firstly, I would want to say that I feel like the part of the country that we're in Oklahoma, maybe Southern culture is a little more welcoming in comparison to the other parts. Or at least that's just a personal outtake. Maybe Southern culture is a little more hospitable in comparison to maybe some of the other sections of the country. But do you think that that is mainly because it's a sense of personal space over here? Because that is something I observed over here a lot more than I did back home, or even when I used to live in the UAE around a lot of other people from be it India or Pakistan and so on. Here, there's a huge regard for personal space. So, do you think that that affects that hospitality or like people being hospitable in general?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's actually one of the main reasons why behind it. Because I would agree with you that people in the United States value personal space very much. And I mean, that totally makes sense because from our personal space, it depends on our mental health, depends on our personal space as well. But also, I feel like mental health can be helped with interactions with other people. And having this hospitality sometimes might actually help being more, not open, but I guess exploring some other people and just understanding different perspectives. And that can change your mind, and that can change something about that you weren't understanding maybe in the past, or just don't really have a good idea of, or maybe you just were stuck with very negative point of view on things, but then there's
Mm.
someone with a different perspective who just comes into your life and just changes everything, you know. And I feel like it's not really necessarily tied up to hospitality in this case, probably, but it's being more open and sincere when it comes to friendships and when it comes to relationships with people.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, totally. Because I was thinking the point that you made is really interesting in terms of how being around people or being connected to people a lot more can definitely help with one's mental health. And I'm not going to take the name of this person, but I was talking to somebody we both know, and they were talking to me about the video, or not a video, but I think a TED talk that they watched about how like being in isolation or being within your own sort of personal bubble can affect your mental health for the worse in comparison to being around a community. And there was an interesting story that she shared with me. So if I can find that TED talk anywhere, I'm gonna uh, link it below as well, because I think it's very interesting to sort of see how those things work, right? In the sense of our connection as social beings to each other, because we are social beings after all. And if you're away from people for too long, you are going to feel a sense of loneliness. And being an introvert myself, I do like to be alone, but a lot of the times I also quite kind of feel like I'm keeping myself away from things a little too much. I feel like I need some interaction. But no, that was just a side note that I thought I'd mention because you made an interesting point. And it's not that easy. Like you don't find your people right away. It takes a lot of trial and error for you to be able to find your people. And sometimes I feel like experiences help you understand what kind of people you actually need. Because even in college, for example, we meet a lot of people. Excuse me, we meet a lot of people, but there's only a select few that we go and open our heart to. Uh, so I definitely feel like it takes time for us to be able to find those people, but at the same time, um, you know, it's not. Yeah, you need to find your tribe, like you said. Um, but you will find it eventually. So, how important is it for you personally? And you don't have to answer this in the sense of if you have found it or not, but how important do you think it is for you as a person to have people that you can rely on, or like a tribe that you can rely on, or like a group of people that you can rely on?
So honestly, I think that for me personally, it is a really important part of our lives to find the right people, to find the right crowd. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but I feel like all the people that I meet and I try to surround myself um, by is people who are better than me, people who know more than me. And I always love to say that my best friends or my friends or people that I meet in my life are better than who I am, because that's how I grow, and that's how I learn from them, and I learn different
Mm.
things, and just that help me to be a better person and just grow as a person myself. And absolutely, I think that finding the right crowd is not an easy thing that you mentioned before, because you open your heart to only few ones that you meet, and it's totally fine, because that's the matter of experience. That's why we meet a lot of people. That's how we learn who we like to talk to, and who we are enjoying to have good time with. And based on that, I think honestly surrounding yourself with the right crowd is very important, because they influence on your life a lot. You might not notice it, but honestly, if I look back to who I was a couple years ago and to who I am today, people that I've met here in the United States has influenced me a lot, as really means a lot to me. And I always try to find the right crowd and always try to find the right people, to not like necessarily right or wrong people. There are no right or wrong people, but who are right
Mm-hmm.
to me and who are right to my mind and to my heart, if it makes sense. And some people, you know how some people can be best friends for like 15 years and then they just stop being best friends after this long period of time. And a lot of people are surprised and say like, oh, there's something must have happened between them or something like that. But honestly, that's not always the case, because people can be different. People, that's how we learn who we are. Maybe when we were children, we were the same way, but after experiencing college life or any different circumstances in our lives, we understand that what our priorities are and how we want to implement them. And the other person who was our best friend a couple years ago might not have the same idea. So it's totally
Mm-hmm.
okay. There is no right or wrong things with that, because that's how people grow and that's how we learn. So yeah. So I think
No,
definitely having the right crowd in our life is very important.
totally. No, I definitely agree with everything you said over there because I don't know if you've heard the saying, but then I think it goes something like this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something like if you know that you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Um, there's a saying, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Sort of like it implies to what you just said, like if you're like sort of around people who are not necessarily helping you grow, then I mean, well, if you were to look or have a more nuanced take on it, I don't see it as a bad thing to be around any kind of people because that shows that you can connect with anybody. But at the same time, I think you need to be around the right kind of people when it comes to growing, because you're not learning anything from people around you if you are the smartest one there. And this is not throwing shade at anybody around you or anybody around me or anybody in general, but it's just that we all grow at different rates. And that example of best friends is very true because we grow differently. And I was watching this video of a person talking about, I don't know if you know, but Bill Gates and Melinda Gates recently got divorced from each other. Bill Gates, the founder, yeah. So somebody was talking about this briefly, and they said that the reason why they decided to break their marriage was the fact that they didn't see each other growing in the relationship anymore. So it's very fascinating how we as people see growth, and in no way am I like promoting divorce or anything, but it's just that I'm not married to even promote it, so anyway. But it's just an interesting thought in terms of how we find ways to grow around people, and sometimes to grow we have to let go of the people who've been in the present or who've been in the past. um, what are your thoughts on that in general? You probably
I
explained it already, but
absolutely
yeah.
No, but I absolutely agree with you because people have different perceptions of what growing is, you know? Some
Mm,
people might take it in a different way than others. And it's not maybe necessarily the case that one person is stop growing or developing slower than the other person. Is maybe probably they have different perception of their goals and how they want to approach them. So that honestly plays a huge role in friendships or just anything that we do in our lives. So um, that's why I always say there is no right or wrong thing when it comes to stuff like that, because you don't know how that person views it. You can't
mm,
judge that person because you haven't lived their life before and you haven't experienced what they have experienced. So I absolutely agree with you that it is totally fine for people not like necessarily get divorced, of course, but
yeah.
going separate ways. Maybe because a couple years later they'll come together and they'll be like, okay, so it feels like we just back in the old days when we were on the same page. Maybe because being actually being separate and letting go of people that you, because that's how you focus on personal growth, not relying on someone else, and just meeting different perspectives at that point might lead you to the same result, if it
Mm.
makes sense.
No, that does make sense. That does make sense because after all, we're here to learn in one way or another, and we're constantly learning as people, be it through experiences, be it through people. Because I'm a firm believer in the fact that, and I've written this somewhere, like on Twitter or something, a couple of times, that people are walking lessons. It's like everybody has something to teach you, like be it a good thing or a bad thing, um, about their own personality. Like even if you see something bad in them, um, and again, this is not necessarily a judgment of their character, but more of a way to see how you could be a better person in that way and still do good. Um, because a lot of the times, I mean, and we've all probably gone wrong in one way or another in our connections with people. And that's bound to happen. We're human after all. So we evolve, and we don't necessarily stay on that positive sort of track of growth every single time. So, but at the same time, I feel like learning from people or learning from the mistakes of other people too definitely helps in terms of helping us grow as people. And you mentioned something really interesting earlier about how the people around you right now in college, or well, at least you graduated, yes, but so far you've learned from a lot of them. So, I mean, without sharing any names, if you're comfortable sharing some things that you've learned from different people, let's say if there's 5 lessons that you've learned from people around you in your time at UCO, what were those lessons?
Okay. First one. I mean, I knew that before, but probably when I was back in high school, I didn't really implement it because you live with your parents and you're just in your comfort zone, and you know that if you can't do something, your parents always can help you. I mean, they still do it for them to do it for me. So one thing that I learned is probably always be motivated. Like there are difficult times and there are difficulties that we're gonna face every single day. And as you mentioned before, a good day for us. And if our life would be that perfect, it would be weird. What is the room for growth? How do we overcome those things? And how do we learn? Because people learn from their past mistakes, and it's okay to fail. It's just a matter if we learn from those mistakes and how we approach it the next time. So definitely being motivated is one of them, and seeing how people struggle, and maybe they struggle more than I do, and seeing how they just do it, just go for it and do it and overcome it. That really motivates me. And I learned from them that it is okay to fail. It is okay to not be always the first, number one, because that's how we learn and that's how we find our motivation. Honestly, I feel like people are most motivated when they fail, when they see others succeed and they want to achieve that. Not necessarily in envy way, being jealous in a negative way is different from being jealous in the positive way. And I hate jealousy in a negative way because people don't really learn from that. They just want to find other reasons why they haven't succeeded like others did. But being jealous in the positive way is actually really good for you because you find motivation and you find strength that you maybe haven't explored in yourself before. The next thing is probably just always go for it. There are a lot of things that we know. Honestly, it comes to everyday things. I feel like international students who come to study in any other foreign country, it's hard for them because it's a new culture, it's a new environment. Not even classes like in the foreign in language, but also like every day-to-day things that we do. Like even going to a bank, opening your personal checking account. The things might be different from where you were at, or just other things, going shopping or anything like that. It is different. And people are scared. I was personally super scared. When I first came to America, I didn't talk to anybody for like 2 weeks because I was so scared to ask something. And that's why I learned from other people, just go for it, because that's how we learn. If we don't try to come and get it, no one is going to get it for us. So no matter how scared you are, just go for it, basically. The other thing that I learned is probably I'm trying to think of people who I met so I can take one thing that I learned from them.
Totally. Yeah.
Always looking at the things with a positive perspective on it. And that kind of like applies to other things that I have mentioned, but I think staying positive is really important for us, even though it might sound very non-ordinary, if it makes sense. Like, yeah, people say just be positive, but not actually just being like smiling every time, or being positive doesn't mean being fun or being cheerful around people. No, being positive, it actually, you can never show it, but in your internal state of mind, you can look at things from the positive side of it, and that's honestly what gives you strength when you are failing. If you fail something, a perspective, I learned this, and that's how you keep going. The other I have learned is probably it is okay to go. It probably applies to my classes that people are, especially like my first years of college, it is okay to go against the flow, because in the sense of that people might be progressing in a different way that you do. Since you don't have just classes for international students. You have classes with domestic students and everybody else, and they might learn things faster than you do, no matter how smart you are, just because of the language barriers. Because there are so many smart people who maybe do not do as well as other people just because of the language barrier. So it is okay to go against the flow in this way, because it's just a matter of a time. And once you overcome that, you will realize that you actually are so much ahead of others, and you have learned so much, and this just blooms all in the same. It can be applied to the things like, when you go to the gym and you work out for 6 months straight, and you're like, oh my gosh, where are all the things that I worked out? It doesn't, like, you can't see it, but like a couple of days later, or like it just goes like this. You look at yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, all this work that I have done for 6 months actually here, and I can see it. So it's basically kind of like that. And probably the last thing that I have learned is just be open. Be open to different things, be open to different perspectives, and be open for different kind of people, because we are not the same. And some people might be less open to connect with you, or some people might be way more open to connect with you. So like they might share personal things with you even though you don't know them that well, and it's okay. And that's why being open to those things and knowing how to adapt to different personalities is very important as a human beings and as adults. That's what I feel like. Knowing how to approach those people is actually defines us. It's actually what defines being an adult, because just knowing how to talk to other people shows our personal growth, in a sense, if it makes sense.
No, that does make sense, because knowing how to talk to people can definitely create openings for you as a person to be able to talk to them in a certain way, because not everybody answers questions the same way, or not everybody is open enough in the same way. So you have to tug at different strings to be able to sort of get that conversation going. And I totally agree in that sense, in the sense that that was sense multiple times in the same sentence. But anyway, I think just being able to talk or have a conversation with people can definitely go a long way, because it helps you connect to people. And you're not going to learn the ability to converse with people right away, like a lot of things in life. But I think from experience of like talking to different people, or maybe even being rejected, and just trying and trying and trying again, it'll get you somewhere to where you learn how to speak effectively for your own circumstances. So that's definitely true. You mentioned something really interesting about going against the flow. Do you think we're afraid of doing that? in some way as people?
Honestly, absolutely. Because I think that that's how a lot of people lose who they are, you know? Some
Mm,
people just so afraid to express who they are in the society in terms of social media being such a big part of our lives, and seeing that, okay, so if most people think this way, I should do this way too, because I'll receive a lot of hate if I go against the flow. I mean, of course, it comes to different conditions and different
yeah.
situations to where to express it. It's to personal state of mind, like just general things in general, and having an opinion on something that is not like politically or something like racially meaningful, if it makes sense, like not a something that can affect someone else's feelings or disrespect them, but just in a sense that talking about general things, it's okay to
Mm,
go. I was honestly, I myself like that. I'm always scared to express myself and like go against the flow, because I'm scared that I'm not going to express what I feel correctly and people will not perceive it the way that I want. So I just prefer not to say anything sometimes. But I think
mm,
actually going, I saw a lot of people at UCO who not love to go against the flow, but they are not afraid to do so. And when they're
mm,
not afraid to do so, that's what makes them special and unique. And that's how those people catch my eye, because I'm like, okay, so I listen to your point of view, and actually now it makes sense to me, and I want to change my perception on things that I viewed before. And I definitely think that, especially being from a different culture and coming down here and trying to go to against the flow uh, with the things that people maybe used to live with, is kind of weird, because maybe they're not going to be appreciative of that, or maybe they'll just think that I'm weird or something like that. That's why I think a lot of people are scared to go against the flow. But honestly, it is okay, because that's how we educate other people. That's how we show that there are different people in this world who think differently
mm.
than you do, and you should appreciate that as well. And you don't have necessarily to agree with them, but at least appreciate and listen to what they have to say.
Totally, totally. Because at the beginning of the episode, when we were talking about some of your dislikes, you mentioned how you appreciate sincerity in people. And you made an interesting point again about how when people they start doing things that everybody else is doing, they tend to lose themselves. Um, so yeah, like from that perspective of not wanting to lose yourself and uh, not trying to fit into a path that somebody else has created, but creating a path for yourself. Um, do you think that it takes a certain experience for you to get that opinion in life? Because I think a lot of the times we're always trying to be like the cool kids in school, or we're always trying to level up to the best person around us. Because I feel like it takes a lot of time for us to reach that realization, and it takes multiple different things for it to happen at multiple different times for you to realize at that moment that look, you're not going to get anywhere by trying to be the way that they are. You're only going to get there by implementing whatever it is that you've learned in your life, because doing the same thing as them is, yeah, like you said, not you're not being sincere to yourself, and you're not being sincere to the people that you know. So how did you come to that realization of sincerity being important in people? Or well, this is probably a twofold
Mm.
question, but have you sort of caught yourself losing yourself, but then realized, oh, wait, I think I'm headed in the wrong direction? And how did you pull yourself back, if you did?
Honestly, I don't recall anything like that in my life, because since I was a child, my mom was always this way. She hates people who lie, and if person like um I guess doesn't not necessarily meets her expectations, but just behave in a very unethical way, she always not
Mm,
really cuts them out or anything. She just says that, okay, I can't rely on this person. So that's how I was since I was a child. And that's why I always appreciated. people and friends who I can rely on, as we talked in the past. And I think that I've never would say that I took a wrong route and call myself being not sincere with myself or not being honest with myself, um, because I always try to surround myself with people who are very brave to express themselves, if it makes sense. That's how I learned. So it's not necessarily that I was scared to express myself all the time, but it's mostly came when I was like high school years, maybe. I wouldn't say that I was like scared to say something against someone or something like that. But if I didn't see that it was worth it, I would just be like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not going to say anything because it is whatever at this moment. But when I came to college, I found the right people, and I found like, that's what makes you a leader. You're not scared to go against the flow. And I found a lot of leaders who are very awesome at expressing themselves, and not just expressing yourself is one thing, but expressing yourself in the correct way that others get you is a whole completely different thing. And so that's how I guess I came to a realization that it is important to learn how to express yourself in a manner that you can change someone's opinion and you can change someone's perspective. And I have a friend actually who was a really close friend of mine since I came to to the United States, and we recently connected, and like she talked to me and said that me being her friend actually changed her perspective on a lot of different things, and now she wants to travel and now she wants to see the world. Is just because we being our friend, and so that actually made me really happy, because just letting people know how awesome the world around us is. It's not just like living in our comfort zone, but actually pushing our limits and going somewhere and exploring different cultures and countries is so eye-opening and it's so mind-blowing. That's why I think expressing yourself in the correct manner is very important, because it can lead and it can help people find themselves. I hope this wasn't a K answer.
No, totally. It was a good answer. No, you're good. No, you're good. Oops, I turned my light off. But no, it definitely makes a lot of sense from the perspective of finding yourself, because for me personally, like you just mentioned, moving away from home, moving out of that comfort zone and being in a different country altogether is just sort of, I guess, a way of fast forwarding your growth, if you will, in the sense that you learn a lot of things very quickly that, if you were back home, and this is no slight at anybody who's back home, it's just that it's different experiences and different sort of ways of living life. It's just that things hit differently now that you have to be dependent on yourself in a lot of situations. And because of that, it sort of fast forwards your growth in a lot of ways. And while I think there's a lot of different things that we learn about ourselves along the way, like the past 4 years for me, sort of going back and touching on graduation, if you will, leading up to graduation, I feel like there's a lot that I've learned about myself. And based off of what you just said, I feel like there's a lot that you've learned about yourself after coming here as well, because of those experiences and because of the people that you've met. Because sometimes I feel like the people around us can be like a mirror for us to sort of come to realization about things. Because sometimes we're not ready to admit it, but then if the people in front of us or the people around us are sort of making that point clear, then you accept it a little more, or at least you try to give it more thought. Because a lot of the times I feel like if you think of something negative in your head, you're like, oh, whatever, I think I'm fine, it's just my head, it's just me thinking a different way. But sometimes having the right people around, this probably goes back to finding your tribe and stuff, but having the right people around you can definitely help you find yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, if you were to sort of like, before we transition into the latter stages of the podcast, if you want to close off with like, not close off, I guess, but if there's three things that you've, well, never, I lost my train of thought. My apologies. But I was going to say,
No, it's okay.
from the perspective, thank you. But from the perspective of finding yourself, what is finding yourself mean to you as a person?
Oof, okay. That's a very hard question because like I feel exposed right now because I'm like, okay, you gotta answer this question very thoughtfully, you know, because it's a very important question. I would say finding myself is a lot of different things. It's a combination of things actually. It can be divided into different goals. It can be your academic goals. It can be your career goals. It can be your personal growth goals. Sorry. And for me, finding myself, it's a combination of all of the things that I enjoy, and what makes me who I am today, if it makes sense. And finding myself in a sense of what career I want to pursue. Because I wanted to do a completely different thing, but now I'm on a completely different route from what I wanted to be. And also finding myself, it means that exploring new things, exploring new hobbies, exploring new food or anything like that. Those little things pile up together and they influence on me significantly, because that's how I define myself, and that's how I learn what I like. And honestly, I look at the finding myself perspective as a state of mind. It's not like, okay, you found yourself, you are amazing, and you achieved this, and you should go on with your life and have the same mindset. No, I feel like finding myself, it's a time changing thing. One year, I'm like, okay, I'm satisfied with myself, and I like this and this. But the next day, I'm like, okay, that's not it. Like, there's something missing, and always looking for that is what actually drives me and keeps me motivated, because I'm not just stuck in one place trying to be cool around others. I get whenever you said that you are trying to look cool in the crowd and be in the society like the best of the best and stuff like that. It's not like that. It's not just like you are found yourself and you think that you are better than others. No, it's more like being satisfied with myself and how I accomplish things. And that also comes to not just finding myself, but also finding the right people along the way, or finding things that I enjoy, even like, music. I enjoy one type of music one day and the other day it's completely different. And it's okay, because that's how I know that I moved from that stage of my life to a different one. And that what drives me and pushes my limits every day. And that's what I find beautiful and beautiful things in life. That's empty at the moment, because I graduated and I achieved that milestone, and I'm like, okay, so what are the next steps? Because I thought that I would be super like satisfied and super proud of myself, which of course I am proud of myself, but it feels different. It feels different from what I expected it to feel. But I think it's because getting a bachelor's, it's me finding myself career-wise, but there's so many more things that I need to explore. And that's why I feel like finding myself, it's a lifetime thing. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to sort of mention or answer that question, because I totally agree with you in the sense that it's a never-ending process. You've never found yourself entirely, because our experiences change. We're faced with different challenges. Right now, we're worried about our source of income. Right now, we're worried about what we're going to do with the degree that we have. But 5 years down the road, we're probably going to be worried about the first house we need to buy, or our families, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, So in all of those phases also, you will go through a process of having to find what's right for you. And in that sense, find yourself, which is why it's never a done deal, because you're always sort of finding yourself. And I think the same goes to like your passions as well. Like your passion is not going to stay the same for your entire existence. In some way, shape, or form, it's going to change. So a lot of the things that we might believe now can definitely change for the better in the future. So yeah, it's to sort of tie a bow on this. I think overall, there's always something to learn, or there's always something to learn about ourselves, or about the people around us, or anything in general. So it's never ending, for sure.
I agree. It's like never ending cycle. And if you don't have anything that you want to do, like if you don't have any sort of um, something that motivates you to do something, you're not growing. You're just staying in one place, and the world around you is moving very fast. And it's
Mm.
not you staying in one place; it's you going down. Down the down the
Interesting.
path. If it makes sense, because you might think that okay, I achieved. I'm a successful person right now, but it's not true because people around us and technologies and everything grow and develop so rapidly that
Mm-hmm.
if you're not up to date, you are not staying in one place. You actually keep declining down the path that you have achieved. So that's why I think it is very important for us to be up to date and be
Mm.
um, in a sense of like being in the same pace with the world around us, and maybe even be faster and grow faster than that.
Mm. But do you think that we are sort of afraid of admitting that, in the sense of, well, I guess in the sense of understanding that you're never going to know everything? Because I think sometimes, and I don't think that everybody is this way, but I do feel like there's people around who tend to, and we've probably been in those positions ourselves in some way or another. And that is it's not a way of me like shaming people for it, because I've probably been there myself too when I was in high school or whatever. But do you think that it's hard for us to admit as people that we constantly need to learn?
Oh, it is hard. It is hard to accept it because, it's basically like studying for a test because you like, oh, I don't want to do that, but you want to get a good grade. So you study anyway. But if you don't do
Hmm.
that, unless you're very lucky, you get a good grade. So it's kind of like that. And of course, admitting that fact that you need to learn every day is hard because people
Hmm.
are naturally lazy, and getting out
Hmm.
of comfort zone takes a lot of uh, encouragement to do that. And
Hmm.
yeah, I absolutely agree with you. That is what most people are afraid to do. And maybe they have a lot of potential, but they just do it. That's why they maybe do not perform as well as they could have done, just because they were scared or afraid to admit that fact.
Hmm. Totally. But yeah, I think we all grow at a different paces. And hopefully, for those people who feel like they're in a spot right now where they're not learning anything, I hope for you that, like, in general, like the people who are listening and watching, that you can find what motivates you, like Yana said, and keep going. Because at the end of the day, we're all here to evolve. Um, I don't know if you're a believer in concepts of afterbirth and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, like as human beings in general, we're evolving with everything that we learn and the way that we grow. So yeah, just in general, like it's very important to sort of keep an open mind, but at the same time, um, do it at your own pace. Like I feel like it's important to understand, or don't feel pressured by people around you, because that again can lead to you. I mean, no, I'm not saying that you won't learn anything. You definitely will, but you might lose the intention with which you're doing it, which indirectly can also lead to you losing yourself. So yeah, like, but don't stop seeking. Keep seeking, as the people
I
at
absolutely
yesterday would say. Seek discomfort. But yes, sorry to interrupt you. You were gonna say?
no, sorry. I absolutely agree with you because it's a very good point that people just keep seeking, and that's what makes you who you are. Honestly, that what makes you unique, and that what shows your work ethics, your ability to seek all the time, not just like stop at one point. And honestly, it's okay to be to take a break from sometimes, like, it's overwhelming and you are trying so hard to like find things that you want to do, and just people get burned out. That's why it is important to find your own pace that you do it with, because if you do it too fast, then you lose everything you wanted to do and you have no motivation to do that. That's why sometimes it's a good thing. We have the saying in Russian that less you know, better better you sleep. So sometimes it's
Mm,
okay to know less, because it will be actually better for your own state of mind, and just move with um like you said, with your own pace, and trying to seek yourself, because um it seems like we don't have time in this world, because everything is so fast, and 24 hours in a
mm,
day is not enough. But honestly, it's okay. No one is going to judge you, because
yeah.
the only judge who you have is yourself. No
Hmm.
one is going to judge your performance, because they don't know you, but you know your goals and your abilities to achieve those things. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a beautiful way to sort of close off this section of the podcast before we transition into the word association game we call Bish Bash Bosh. So Bish Bash Bosh is basically a round where I give the guests 5 different words. And these words are the same. I ask the guests the same words just to sort of understand how people respond to the same things differently. Um, and these 5 words sort of are principles in terms of me starting the podcast and this whole sort of project, if you want to call it that. So basically, for example, if I was to say the word motivation, what are the 3 things that come to your mind first when I say the word motivation? That's basically what you're looking to, or that's the manner in which you're looking to respond, be it in 3 words or in 3 phrases. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So the first word for this segment is differences. What comes to your mind when I say the word differences?
Differences. Okay. Um, Mindset,
Hmm.
approach, and um, thinking.
Hmm. I like it. Second word is nuance. What comes to your mind when I say the word nuance?
Attention,
Hmm.
eyes,
Hmm.
and listening.
Cool. The third word is learning. What comes to your mind when I say the word learning?
Dedication,
Hmm.
passion, and discipline.
Hmm. That's deep. And the fourth word is empathy. What comes to your mind when I say the word empathy?
Um, um, Likability, is it even a word? I would say like, um, no, let's change the word, because I'm not sure if it's an English word or not.
Okay.
Um, oh, and okay. Uh, Love,
Hmm.
self love,
Hmm.
and appreciation.
Beautiful. And the last word for this segment is similarities. What comes to your mind when I say the word similarities?
Okay, that's interesting. Um, Ethics,
Hmm.
um, preferences,
Mm,
and approach.
definitely, definitely. Nice. Well, thank you for playing along that segment of Bish Bash Bosh. Um, we're going to head into the penultimate question for this podcast. And that is, how do you relate to people? Or how do you see is the best way for you to relate to people?
um, how do I relate to people? It's a very good question because whenever I talk to someone, I always try to relate myself to them because I'm trying to make this conversation very personal and not like I'm
Mm,
listening to you just okay, okay, this conversation is over, so I'm gonna forget about you because I'm trying to always listen and not necessarily sometimes giving an advice is not the best way to emphasize someone and but being an active listener and knowing how to say the right words in the moment is what makes it very valuable. And I feel like being personal in the conversation like that is very important. So when I relate to people, I always try to find um, some time in my life when I felt the same way and how
mm,
I overcame those and how maybe I could have done that better listening to that person and how what they're going through. So, and honestly, just being curious, like being curious to a certain extent when you don't hit that like line when it comes too personal and the person doesn't want to talk about it. You're just very curious because you want to know how that person feels in it if they feel the same way as you did because maybe were in the same situations but you feel differently. So it is very important to just listen, appreciate, and understand in these situations, like understand what that person feels and how you can help that person. Not even honestly
mm,
help that person, but be a good listener. Be not just a listener, but be an active listener. So
mm.
I feel like that's very important in our lives because people tend to speak a lot and talk a lot because they think if you talk more, you seem smarter and you seem that you're superior than others. But actually, it's not true. Like being a good listener is what takes to be a good leader, and not just a good leader, but just a good person in general.
Mm. Very true, very true. And yeah, you've put it there very, very nicely. So for the last, well, I always call this a question, and I always say that I need to stop calling it a question, but I probably never will. But anyway, leave us with a positive thought or a positive quote before we leave.
uh, okay. As I mentioned, always go for it. If you fail,
Mm,
it's okay. You learn. It's matter how you take that lesson in your life. Also, um, enjoy your way when you're trying to achieve something because once you achieve that goal, you feel empty. What matters is how you feel throughout the process and what you learn
mm,
and people you meet. That's the most important part. So, even if it's hard, you should enjoy it.
definitely, definitely. That's a beautiful way to close this episode off. Thank you so much, Yana, for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and for sharing all of your thoughts and yeah, about the culture of Kazakhstan and things about growth in general. Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Prateek, for inviting me. And you guys have a good the rest of your day, the rest of your evening, the rest of your morning, whenever you see it. And yeah,
Yeah,
I hope
and
you guys will find yourself and to never stop growing.
totally, totally, totally. We all wish the best for you, to all the listeners and watchers in any way that is. If you're planning on trying something new or taking that next step, um, you got this. Believe in yourself. And yeah, thank you so much for listening or watching this episode. And we will see you next time. Thank you for watching this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Make sure to follow Yana on her social media accounts and mention in the comment section below some of the things that you found interesting, intriguing, or relatable about this conversation. Make sure to also check the description box below for other sources of information and content that we've discussed about today. Like this video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit that bell icon to never miss another episode. If you've made it this far, thank you once again for doing so. I really appreciate you joining in on the conversation. It's because of people like you that we get to share these different perspectives from this beautiful world. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know, random relatability might just be around the corner.